All right, welcome back to another episode of Real Estate Life. I'm Rob Edgerly with Maine Life Real Estate, part of eXp Realty. And today I'm joined by somebody I've really been excited about having on our program, a wealth of information, and I'm excited that he's joined us here today, Mr. Brit Vitalius.
Hey, Rob, how you doing? Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. We're going to be talking about multi-units today. You are the king of multi-units in Portland. I've just given you that title, and tell us a little bit. I was reviewing your LinkedIn profile, and you've been doing this for a long time. You've got a lot of experience, and you're deep in the community. So tell us a little bit about what your background is here in the area.
Yeah, well, I grew up in the area. I grew up in Yarmouth, and who doesn't love Maine? Went away for a bunch of years and ski bummed and chased a girl and did a whole bunch of things and went around and came back to the area and wanted to get into real estate. And my mentor, Mac McBride, said, just focus on multi-units, focus on one thing and do one thing well. And if you do one thing well, it will be the differentiator. You will become known as the person who does that. And that real estate is really like a candy store. And there are a lot of things out there you can do, a lot of ways to make money. But if you don't focus, you kind of wind up being no better than anyone else. And so his path and his recommendation was to focus on one thing. And so multi-units it was, and that was 15 years ago, and still doing it.
Wow. And so, that's what you focus on, and you've been doing this for 15 years. Why multi-unit? What was the draw to multi-units?
I had actually purchased a multi-unit with my family before getting into real estate. And it was what actually got me excited about real estate. I'd been in a software programmer prior to that. And I really just loved all the pieces of an investment property. There was a physical property, there was the investment analysis, there were the tenants, there was the leases, so there's legal aspects. And it was just interesting. It was enough to, there's always more to do when you can focus on the part that you're good at. And so we see people get into multis because they're really handy and they're good with the physical part. We see people get into them because they're good at the analytics. Other people are good people and they manage the tenants well. And so I like just how multidimensional it was. And I've really enjoyed it. I don't thrive as much going through single family homes and working with clients on that as much as I do multis. So I guess I just got lucky and got into a good fit.
Yeah, that's awesome. And with multi-units, obviously there's the cash flow piece of it, and there's dealing with the tenants. There's investment long term. Is there one part of that that really turns you on, or is just kind of all of that?
I really like the way it all comes together and understanding what our clients are trying to do, and then be able to give them some feedback and perspective about the market and the ways the dynamics work with multifamilies in the context of what they're trying to do. And so, for example, a lot of people want to come in and buy a 2-unit for cash flow. I say, no, you're not going to get real cash flow out of a 2-unit. Let's step back. What are you trying to do? Are you trying to buy a home and have someone else pay your mortgage? Or are you really trying to build a portfolio of real income, and quit your day job? And those are different goals. Or are you trying to keep your day job and just build a portfolio in the background? Well, these are all different goals, and different properties analysis would lead you to different paths. So I really enjoy just that you've got to think about all those pieces and how to put the right combination together for your clients, because they often come in with one sort of expectation, and you've got to say, yeah, that's not quite how it works. We get a lot of clients who just watch the late night infomercial. I don't know if they still have those. Actually, get rich, flip properties. It's so easy. Every once in a while something comes to town, a rich dad, poor dad, or a Trump university or something comes to town, and suddenly everyone's a real estate investor. And it can kind of sniff those out right away when they just read the book and they think it's easy.
Right.
They're going to quit their day job in a few months. It's slow down.
Yeah, I think we see those, and they do tend to come in around those events that happen.
They definitely do.
It's kind of like on the single family side, if somebody's looking to all of a sudden flip homes, they've been watching a lot of television. We kind of have to ask a lot of questions before we get, start showing them houses.
Yeah, exactly.
So my background with multi-units is when I was growing up, my dad owned about 100 units, and I should say my dad owned 100 units. And so I spent a lot of time as a kid cleaning them out when people moved out in our ditch town, and these weren't really these weren't luxury places. So mowing lawns, painting stairs, and all kinds of stuff. And so I've always been really intrigued. And actually, my wife and I bought a 2-unit setup a few years ago. And then after a few years, decided it wasn't really working, and we got out. I still kick myself sometimes, because I think what you're touching on is that some people get into these things and they forget that there's a lot of work involved with this too. Is there a certain type of investor that you specialize in, or first question, and then how do we really as agents, because we also work with people looking for multis, but definitely not at the level that you're doing it. What are you seeing out there? Or do we have a lot of these people just looking to buy a place to live in it?
I mean, you got a couple questions in there. One point you mentioned is that I want to reiterate is that these multis are a lot of work, and I think the way they're perceived from the outside, and when I mentioned people who've just been to the class or just read the book, that is always that there's not enough emphasis on, is that there's work and time involved. And so they'll come in and say, look, it's all about the numbers. It's all about the cash flow. I read the book. It's all about the cash flow. Cash is king.
Right.
So yeah, but there's work associated with that. And in fact, the properties that make more income are harder to manage. They're in worse condition. They have more challenging tenants. So they will take more time. So yes, there's more income, but there are more hours associated with that. But that doesn't sell books. So that's not what they are really thinking about. And you can tell when you have a veteran investor, because they get that. They get the value of a nicer property, or at least of the time and work it's going to take to manage the building. Because ultimately all we have is time, right? And so as real estate brokers, and I put this question back to brokers a lot. They want to get into owning multis. I said, look, you make too much money taking care of your clients. You've got to be aware every hour you're taking care of this property that doesn't really make any money, you're not taking care of your clients. So that's okay, but go into it just cognizant of those dynamics that we only have so many hours in the day. So, so in the beginning of my career, I worked with a lot of owner occupants. I was young, I was new. There was a lot of people buying their first multis, and we got really good at that and created spreadsheets that could compare the cost of owning a single family home to the cost of owning and living in a 2-unit or a 3-unit. And so while you might pay more for the 2-unit or the 3-unit, the total cost of living was less. And so we started to just really understand those dynamics, and we could show them on a spreadsheet. You could play with interest rates and cash flow, and what if that other rent goes up a little bit or more over time. And so really understood that and how that sort of those values and cost of living translate. And then over time, you just start doing bigger and bigger properties. And now we work with the biggest owners in the city, and we know all the players, and that's fun. And now one of our challenges is we wind up with a lot of 1031 buyers who have sold something either locally or in another community and are really under the gun to find another multi-unit to reinvest in. And that's a challenge. That's fun. That really pushes us because we've got to go find something. In many cases, it doesn't exist. We can't just be brokers, waiting for the MLS feed to kick us up a listing. We've got to go use our network in the community and knowing and all the relationships we have with landlords to try and find a good match. And it feels like doing real brokerage, frankly, that brokers should be matchmakers and putting buyers and sellers together. And in some way, I mean, that's absolutely what we do, but the MLS makes it so easy. Some of us forget that there's also the work, and sometimes you just go scrounge up a deal and you put it together and sort of the old fashioned way. So it's hard though, and it's a lot of pressure when you've got a client under the gun.
Yeah, what's the tax liability? Yeah, 60 days, is that?
So here's my 1031.
Give us a 1031 exchange overview for those that don't know what that is.
Yeah, so a normal straightforward 1031, you can do them in reverse, but let's just keep it simple for now. From the date you sell, the closing date, You have 45 calendar days to identify up to 3 replacement properties. You just have to identify them. You file those names or the address of the property with your qualified intermediary. And then you've got 180 days from the closing date to close on those. Those dates are kind of backwards. Those timelines are kind of backwards because the hard thing is to find a replacement property. They should give you more time for that. 45 days is not a long time. And the reason you don't need a long time to close is at that point, you've got the money in hand. You've already had your closing. So, a month and a half to find a replacement property is tough. I really tell people, start looking as soon as you're going on the market with your first property to give yourself some extra runway. So if it's going to take 45 days to close your first sale, you build in about 45 days there before the actual 1031 45 days starts.
Right.
I'm not sure if I said that right.
Yeah.
The other key point I want to make sure I say is your client, the seller, whoever, or you, the owner who's selling the property, the first primary property, can never touch the money. You can't touch it. You have to have a qualified intermediary in place prior to the closing. They will actually sign the closing statement, and the funds from the closing will go to the qualified intermediary, and then they will buy the replacement property. If you skip that step, it's game over. Don't worry about it. You can forget all about 1031s. Just, you got your money, go pay your taxes.
So that's the IRS just making sure that you're not pulling the money out, doing something else with it, putting it back, and trying to shield yourself from some tax, from corporate gains or capital gains tax.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah. And so this whole thing is a tax deferred exchange. The taxes don't go away. You just defer them.
Gotcha. So what's your, for those of us who get a phone call from an investor that wants to deal in multi-units, and, people listening might have thought, I want to get into this game. I want to, I have a passion for this. I want to focus on that. What are some of the key things that they need to ask and make sure that they're paying attention to be a good buyer's broker? And then we can
ask of their clients or to ask themselves.
Great. Well, great qualification of that. How about of themselves?
I mean, I think if you want to bring value to buyer clients around investment properties, brokers should educate themselves about investments. Go read some books, understand what a cap rate is, understand how to do a cash flow analysis, understand properties, go through them, see them. The heating systems and electrical systems tend to be more complex. The rental markets are very different in different communities. In Portland, we got things like rent control, and in South Portland, you can't do Airbnbs. There are a lot of little quirks in our communities that make investments work or not work. And so I think if you want to get into that market, just educate yourself. And I think it takes more than just having access to the MLS and a set of car keys to be a broker in this space if you're really going to bring value to your client. So, yeah.
And what are some of the mistakes that you see being made out there, where maybe on the seller side, you're looking at the buyer side and thinking, oof, they ought to be looking out for themselves here?
In some cases, I think just either both sides, meaning the buyer and the buyer's agent, don't really know what they're doing, and that's fine. If a buyer's got some money and they just want to go buy a 2-unit and they think it's going to cash flow, we've seen agents, they help them do it. They spend a lot of money, they buy a nice 2-unit and they own it. Probably doesn't really make any money, but I don't know that anything was done wrong. Some people want to buy condos as investments in single family homes, and I don't particularly understand that from a cash flow perspective. But if you just want to diversify and put some of your money into real estate, that's fine. So I don't know that I see mistakes exactly. You can just see that there's just such a lack of context going on as they're having conversations. They maybe don't know that rent control is going on, or how that might affect things, or the Airbnb rules in Portland, or the landlord-tenant laws about raising rents and leases and all that. So it's just more a little bit like they're just kind of fumbling through it. I think probably some folks have bought bigger properties and not been aware how much work it takes, or how They actually don't make a ton of money, particularly the first couple of years. There's always more headaches than you think. I mean, you grew up with it, Rob. I didn't remember or didn't know that you had that background. I mean, you really know that these things take work.
Yeah,
and,
you're gonna have to have some young kids to go take care of all that.
Yeah, we've just recently put our portfolio, which is only about 35 units, over to property management because it was just too much time. We self-managed for a long time, and it just got to the point I wasn't doing a good job, and it was not a good use of my time. My time was better spent doing brokerage for my own clients and running my company.
Right.
And we pay a lot more now for that management, but it was worth it. You get to a certain size and you pay for other services so you can go do something better. But because it's work, it's a lot of little things.
It goes back to what you said earlier about your advice of doing your one thing. If your one thing is multi-units, well, your one thing to get even more granular, your one thing is selling multi-units, perhaps not managing them and picking up and scraping stuff off the walls that we don't even talk about. So
that's exactly right. That's a perfect sort of combination. So even though I own them, that's not really how I make a living. For me, that's a retirement portfolio. They're building equity. I don't need the income. I put the money back into them. And we have a lot of buyers who come along with those same goals. And so then that helps me relate. It does help me be better at my job. I guess I should make that point. Owning multis helps me be a better multi-broker.
Yeah.
Because I can speak from experience. So there may be value to agents out there who want to get into multis. Go buy a multi, not because it's even going to make you any money, but you will learn and you will be a credible agent and advisor to your own clients because you can speak from true experience. And I think there's a lot of value in that.
Yeah, I love that. So if we're looking for a multi-unit right now, where's the sweet spot? It just seems, I mean, we're here in March of 2021, and the market is on fire. And it definitely is on fire on the single family side, and it seems like there's not a lot of opportunities on the multi-unit side. Tell me a little bit about that, and tell us so we kind of know where to look.
Yeah, as though I've had the crystal ball. I say I think I'm a good multi-unit broker. I do not think I have intuition or have that sixth sense that some people just have, where they just can dive into a market and hit the jackpot. They know how to time it. I can tell you that multi-units are still very hot. Prices have gone up dramatically in the last year. Not as much as the single family world, and it's not as hot, but it's still crazy. And I think, like so many of us in real estate, it's hard to figure out how to advise your clients because the market's been going up for so long. I was telling clients I thought it was overheated 2 and 3 years ago. And my joke, although it's true, is if people had not listened to me, the people who did not listen to me 2 or 3 years ago, when I said maybe it's overheated, they've made a lot of money because it just keeps going up.
Right.
So it's hard to know when to jump in. But to try and answer your question a little more, Portland is still very hot. We just put 3 different 3-unit properties under contract for over $1 million. 2 of them have closed. The third one's going to close shortly. These are properties that should have been $650, $750, for a long time, maybe $450, $650, and suddenly they're over $1 million. And so I think it's kind of like what you all are feeling in the single family market. So Portland's really overheated. I shouldn't say overheated. It's just jumped in value a lot. But there's also a strong rental market. Now, this rent control in Portland has added this whole other wrinkle, and we don't even really have time to go into it here. There's a lawsuit that we filed on behalf of the Southern Maine Landlord Association and a couple other landlords. So it may hold or it may get totally thrown out. Who knows how that's going to affect the market? So that's almost a little like pause there. I don't even know how to advise around that. But I think it's a good reason for buyers to be thinking about all the non-Portland markets. And while they've been slow, had been slow for a lot of years, and after the 2008 dip, were really slow to come out of the trough. Saukville, Bedford, and Lewiston, Auburn, very slow to come out of the trough. They are now very viable markets. Their rental markets are increasing, are attracting a different kind of tenant base than they had for many, many, many years. So I think those areas are worth looking to. Let's talk about Biddeford. Westbrook it's almost impossible to buy anything in Westbrook right now. There's no inventory. Brunswick is getting a lot of attention. And I don't personally know the Lewiston Auburn market, but I think that's a very dynamic market that community, the chamber up there is very actively looking to grow and develop, and will be much more welcoming to investment in some of those other communities than Portland is. Portland is so hot, you get the sense that they're kind of fighting growth, and you got the rent control and all those things. You go to these other communities, they want investment. They want people to come and improve their properties. And so there, I think, are some exciting areas outside of Portland and southern Maine.
Yeah, that's interesting. So, for those that maybe are listening that aren't in Maine, but they're thinking about, okay, do I go 2 unit, 3 unit, 5+? What are many of us think about? I'm thinking about somebody in particular a younger guy who wants to get into buy a multi-unit. And is it 2 unit or 3? Which one's the better one?
3 unit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Twos are designed to be homes for the most part. Twos are designed to be homes with one other income coming in. Threes start to feel a little more like apartment buildings. You play with a model over a few years. If you run the spreadsheet and you get a 3 or a 4 unit, when the market goes up, each unit goes up $50. It's now 2 other units or 3 other units going up $50. It starts to really build on itself in a way that the 2 units just really have a hard time sort of getting out of the gate, and you still have a roof to maintain, you still have a boiler to maintain, paint to keep on the siding. They just don't really scale. So they can be nice to own. There's certainly some that work on paper because the rents can be so high, but generally that's not where I look. The challenge is there tend to be more 2 units available in most communities. So 3 units and 4 units are always the hot item and hard to buy. So that's tough. And so maybe that pushes you back to a 2 unit because maybe the prices are just better, or for some other reasons. But as a general premise, I would go in looking for 3 to 4s if you're going to do residential financing. If you want to do an FHA loan, a 10% down loan, those are available for 2, 3, and 4 unit properties. If you want to become a real player, only buy 5 and up, because those are commercial loans. Those are really designed to cash flow. 2, 3, and 4s are really residential properties, essentially. 5 and up are designed to cash flow. And they cash flow on a 20-year mortgage, not a 30-year mortgage. So when you're doing cash flow on the 2, 3, and 4 unit, you're analyzing it on a 30-year residential mortgage, typically, because that's what you can get. So if you can get it, you take it. But 5 and up, you're analyzing it on a commercial loan that generally, although this is changing more recently, is on a 20-year loan. So for that client who's just trying to build a portfolio, is not going to quit their day job, I say to them, look, the 5, 6, 10 unit makes significantly better cash flow, and you are going to have no debt on this property. You're going to own it free and clear in 20 years, whereas a 3 unit you're looking at doesn't have as good a cash flow, and you're not going to own it for 30 years. The first 10 years, you're just paying interest.
Right.
So those are the kinds of conversations to have with your clients in the early stages to really flush out their goals, their appetite, what their cash position is, how much they can put into a property. If they're a first-time buyer and they only have 3.5% down, great. Get started. Buy a 2 or 3 unit and get in the game. But if you've got access to more capital, you got to go bigger.
So a commercial loan, you really get 25% down. Is that
20, 25, depending on the banks. And this is where you really interview the local banks, and different banks have a different appetite for different types of investments at different times, depending on how their portfolio is weighted. It's very different experience than getting a Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac backed loan where you're really just filling out a form. You get into the larger properties, you're getting a loan from your local bank. You're talking to the person who's approving the loan. They can get on board with your plan. They care that you know what you're doing. All those things really matter in a very different way than with the more traditional residential loans.
Awesome. That's interesting. Is it hard to find those 5+ unit properties right now?
It's very hard. It's very hard. It's hard to find anything, but these are all our 1031 investors that we're trying to go scrape a deal together for. This is what we're trying to find. We're trying to find them a 6-unit, a 10-unit, and there just aren't many out there. There are a handful of big players who don't sell. They just own them. They're their income. And Portland, although it's the biggest city, is still a very small city. There's not a lot of inventory out there, right. and there's a lot of capital. So in Maine and other areas, it's still hard to find a good investment.
It seems like that just across the country. Just talking to people, from mastermind groups, it's just everybody's in the same boat right now. So
there's a lot of capital and interest rates are low. So when you analyze the finances of it, if a bank's going to loan you money at 3%, you almost don't care if the property is making money, real cash flow, because you get other benefits from owning. You're paying down the principal. You've got a depreciating asset, so you can take the depreciation, offset other income. There are a lot of reasons that people own real estate, and at these interest rates, they just become even more attractive.
Yeah, that's the beauty of real estate, right? That's what we all love it.
Absolutely.
What are you bullish or bearish on the next few years here, the market in general?
Like I said, I don't have good instincts for this kind of thing. I think I'm bullish insofar as we are not creating a lot of new inventory as a general statement in the country and also the region. So I think there's going to be continued pressure on rental rates. And as long as the rental rates stay up, the values will stay up. These two things are really linked. People aren't just paying a lot for multis because they can. It's different than a single family home. Single family home, someone's going to pay a lot if that's just where they want to live. That's what they choose to spend their money on. The value of multis will go up if the rents go up. And so it's really looking at the rental market combined with interest rates and utilities that will determine the values. So I don't see why rents are going to dip. If some COVID wave recedes and people go back to New York City and back to some of the larger urban centers, there may be some experience of ebb and flow. But I think generally it's going to, I don't see a crash, because it's not like we overbuild.
Right. Yeah, this definitely isn't the same as 2008 and 9. That the crash. It seems like where the run up to that. I feel like there's really there's something else behind this. There's at least real estate local. So that's what we're feeling here in the Northeast for sure.
I think there is. I think there's a foundation to this. That the people buying the buildings have real capital. The bank, the lenders all remember 2008, so they're not being crazy with their lending for the most part. And the tenants have jobs and are paying rent. Yeah.
You've got your own brokerage, and you guys have been successful bringing people on. I see. And what's your vision for the future? For where do you guys go? What do you want to do with your own real estate and company?
My company have worked really hard to actually stay small. We're kind of right on the edge of that right now. I'm flattered to get inquiries once in a while with folks who want to come over and join, and it would just be a different model. At some point you get bigger and then you're different. The personality of your company is different. So I like being small. I like that our company has a personality. My only goal for the future really is to kind of stay the same size, but to just always be better at what we do. And that's really what drives me, is we can always be better. We can market a property better. We can communicate with our clients better. There are a lot of people who do real estate very well, and we're always looking to other models and saying, how can we take that piece from what they're doing and incorporate it? There should never be anyone out there who's doing something better than we're doing, just because we show up and we're hungry and we want to. So really striving for excellence. And putting that above the dollars come. That if you focus on being good at what you do, that's what's satisfying. And when you do that, you're rewarded by making a good living. And so it's maybe not much of an answer. It's not very specific with financial growth or numbers or anything like that, but it's kind of what drives me.
I love that. One of our core values is constant and never-ending improvement, which is why we like to do things like this and learn. And I've got all kinds of nuggets from just focusing on your one thing you talked about to, different, you really have to ask yourself as a broker, why, if you want to get into this or not. You kind of brought some clarity to some of the haziness of whether or not you want to get into multi-units personally or for your clients, and the ins and outs of that. I think that was, I've got a lot of key takeaways, and I think a lot of people have a ton of, they're going to watch this a couple of times, I think. I hope. I really appreciate your time, because this was, seriously, I have some actionable items. I'll probably end up calling later.
Please do.
I really appreciate it. Where can people look you up? Instagram, Facebook, all that. Some of your handles.
Yeah. Thanks so much. Well, I'm very lucky that I've got a fairly unique name. So Vitalius.com is right out there, and from there you can find us on Facebook and all the normal handles. But Vitalius.com, you can find everything we do. We write a condo report, a multi-unit report. You can see our team there.
Awesome. Thanks, Brit. We appreciate it. And anybody else, you're going to get a chance. We're going to, this will be on Real Estate Life with Rob Edgerly on Facebook. We're also, you can find me at my Instagram handle is Rob Edgerly, and I've got a Facebook page and all that. But us too is robedgerly.com is probably the easiest place to find all of it. Really appreciate everybody's time. And again, thanks, Brit. This was awesome. And
thank you.
We'll see everybody next time. Remember, it's not where you live, it's how you live. Thanks a lot. Have a great day, everybody.